Chair recognizes Senator from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, Mr. Leader.
Senator, is it not also true that if we eliminated those families who are already most able to pay for their children's education, that it would increase the amount of money available for the education of children under the Hope Scholarship?
Yes.
Is it not, Senator Further Yield?
Yes.
Is it also true that if we do that, that we would need to have less money pulled out of the reserve?
Yes, I think that we would need to have a reserve that would be at a substantial amount, but I think that we may be able to have a smaller reserve.
Senator Further Yield.
Yes.
Rephrasing the question, does that not mean that it would be less likely that we would need to pull money out of the reserve?
Well, we certainly would not have to grandfather in any students because we would preserve the Hope Scholarship under the plan that will be presented in a minute for virtually all of the students that now receive it. So we would certainly have less of a concern about grandfathering in the current students, and we would not need to utilize this money for that purpose.
Senator Further Yield.
Yes.
Is it not also true that we have evidence that many of the poorer counties in this state have people who pay disproportionately income to the lottery?
Yes, that is true.
Senator Further Yield.
Yes, Mr.
Is it not also true that they have less return in those same counties from students who actually participate in the Hope Scholarship?
That is my understanding of all of the data that I have seen, Mr. Leader.
Chair recognizes Senator from the first. Question.
Would the Senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, just to clarify something in a question from the Majority Leader earlier, he asked you the question that, is there not a point at which reserves could fall that would be dangerous? And you answered yes. Is it not true that reserves could fall through various aspects of the lottery and the programs with Hope, but that in your amendment it will not fall because of funding of the students who are already in schools because you have protections in place there?
Correct. Under this amendment, we preserve the shortfall reserve provided for in Code Section 50-27-13. We preserve the shortfall reserve calculated by the governor and by HB 326 to be sufficient. So we preserve a sufficient reserve, and we only grandfather people in to the extent possible without dipping into that necessary reserve.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 19th. President Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, Mr. President Pro Tem.
I think everybody in the chamber understands the $441 million as it relates to this bill. The number that is a little vague for us is the top number, the 681, which we're assuming, based on the Majority Leader's previous question, that is a fluctuating number that's money coming in and Hope and pre-K being paid out. Where did you get that number?
That number is from the Georgia Student Finance Commission projection. So this is the number that will be the year-end reserve balance for all the reserves. And that is the same number that the bill requires at the end of each fiscal year to be 441. So this is the Georgia Student Finance Commission's projection for how much will be in that account.
Senator Further Yield.
Yes, Mr. President.
Senator, on the lottery, on the money that's returned to the state, that line has been flatlined for a number of years, as you're showing, but the increase has been on the sales. Right. Isn't it true that some other states around us have added lotteries in that time frame?
Mr. President Pro Tem, yes, I believe other states have added it, and it has not reduced our sales or revenues. It's just kept flat our educational commitment. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from 36.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
To my colleague, you've made the case and provided us with the numbers, isn't it true, to demonstrate that we can, in fact, by action on this Senate floor today, we can actually take a vote, pass this amendment, and go home and say to the families and students in all of our districts that we looked hard, we searched up and down, and we found a solution on this particular piece of how to grandfather in these students whose families and the students themselves have been making plans for years that are based on working hard, earning hope, and having that assistance for their college education.
That is true, Ms. Senator, and I hope that we will do that in a bipartisan way, and I welcome and appreciate your question.
And isn't it further true that many of us very much appreciate, a lot of comments of appreciation have been given from the well today quite appropriately, and it would be appropriate, would it not, to add, from speaking for many of us, we appreciate the work that was put into by you and your staff, the work that's been gone into to get us to this opportunity that we can all hopefully support in a bipartisan manner and can go home and say to our families and students, we are keeping our commitment. Isn't that the case?
Everybody has this snappy way of saying yes and thank you. I'm sure you know what you're speaking about, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Senator's time in the well has expired. We do have one more question. I'm going to allow, your time has expired we've gone over, but Senator from the 49th will be recognized as the last question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, my good friend.
Thank you, sir. Isn't it true that the Georgia Lottery Corporation is one of the best performing state lotteries? In fact, ranked number 5 in sales throughout the country?
Only if you consider sales to be the metric by which we judge our lottery. And to me, the only public benefit to the lottery is how much does it fund our education system. But I do appreciate the work that they have done on the marketing side.
Isn't it also true that even though Georgia ranks 9th in state population, Georgia ranks 2nd in sales for the Georgia Lottery Corporation?
That I believe is true.
And we've talked a great deal today about what we're taking to the bottom line, basically percentages versus dollars. We can't pay bills with percentages.
No, yes, you're right.
We can only pay bills with dollars.
Mr. Senator, you are correct, and we need to make sure that we maximize the amount of actual dollars that are deposited into that account. And those.
So, does the gentleman further yield?
Yes.
So even though our percentages may be lower, we are actually taking more dollars to the bottom line. Is that correct?
If you saw the chart that I put up, when you adjust for inflation, our revenues and the impact of that on has gone through the roof, and the amount paid into the education fund has not changed. And so whether we are maximizing those dollars or not, I can't say. But I can say that it is better for our state and for our children to maximize the amount of money that goes into that education fund rather than judging our lottery based on the overall revenues. Because as I said before, I don't know that we would have a consensus here that there is a public benefit from maximizing the amount of lottery sales, but there is a public benefit from maximizing the amount that we spend on education.
Wow.
I'm glad you're impressed, Mr. Senator. I'm glad you're impressed.
Thank you very much.
I asked for your vote.
Is it also true, does the gentleman further yield?
Yes, Mr. Senator.
Is it also true, according to the Georgia Department of Audits and Accounts, performing audit operations, that the increase in sales exceeded the decreases in percentages, and the actual amount transferred to the state funds were exceeded 52%?
The actual amount transferred has gone up, but it has barely kept up with inflation, as evidenced by the chart that I had.
Thank you, sir. And to that point, more dollars were to the bottom line, correct?
More dollars to the bottom line.
Thank you very much.
But just barely.
Thank you. Well, every little bit counts, right? Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator.